More than 150 years ago, the United States fought the bloodiest war in its history, not against a foreign enemy, but against itself. Nearly 3% of the entire population died in the conflict. That war was the American Civil War, and one of the two sides that fought it was the Confederate States of America. The Confederacy lost, it collapsed, and it vanished from history. But what if it didn't stay that way? What if for whatever reason the Confederacy suddenly re-emerged today as an independent country? What would a modern Confederate States of America actually look like? To begin with, the same 11 states that made up the original Confederacy would likely form this new one. Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia together. These states would have a combined population of over 100 per million people. That number is staggering when you consider that in 1861, the total population of the Confederacy was just over 9 million people, more than 11 times smaller than it would be today. Slavery was the defining feature of the original Confederacy. In 1861, 39% of the population were enslaved people, meaning the free population was only about 5.5 million in the modern world. However, slavery is both unthinkable and impossible. A modern confederacy would instead be industrialized, urbanized, and economically complex, bearing little resemblance to its 19th century predecessor. In 1861, the most powerful Confederate state was Virginia, which hosted the capital city of Richmond, located just 155 kilometers from Washington, D.C. At the time, the largest city in the Confederacy was New Orleans, with a population of only 169,000 people. The least influential states were Florida, with just 140,000 residents, and Texas, which had a population of only 600 per thousand people. A modern confederacy, however, would look completely different. Virginia would fall to 5th place in population, while Texas and Florida would dominate the country politically, economically, and demographically. Texas, in particular, would be the undisputed powerhouse of the modern Confederacy. Houston would become the largest city in the country, replacing New Orleans, and 6 of the 10 largest cities in the Confederacy would all be located inside Texas. The remaining major cities would be spread across a few other states. The capital city would most likely be either Austin, Texas, or Tallahassee, Florida, reflecting the shift in power away from the old Confederate heartland. But if the Confederacy ever re-emerged, one thing would be almost guaranteed: immediate conflict with the remaining United States. So how would the two sides compare? The Confederate States would have 100 per million people, while the remaining United States would still have over 217 million. The modern Confederacy's GDP would be approximately $5.08 trillion, making it the 3rd largest economy in the world. However, the remaining United States would still have an economy of roughly $13.5 trillion, more than twice as large, and would remain the world's most powerful economy. Even after losing Confederate territory, the Confederacy's military budget would be around $161 billion, also the 3rd highest globally. But this would pale in comparison to the remaining United States military budget of $450 billion, which would overwhelmingly outmatch it. Interestingly, military size would be far more balanced than in 1861, assuming no defections. The Confederacy would begin with approximately 1.15 million active duty soldiers. The remaining United States would have around 1.1 million soldiers, only slightly more. In contrast, during the Civil War, the Union reached 698,000 soldiers at its peak, compared to just 360,000 Confederate troops. Despite everything, a modern Confederacy would still be a major global power, with the 3rd largest economy and 3rd most powerful military, much like it was relative to the world in 1861. However, it would remain significantly weaker than the United States. While both sides might start with similar sized armies, the Union could mobilize far more soldiers over time, thanks to its much larger population. It would also be far better equipped, supported by a vastly superior economy and military budget, which means that if another civil war were ever to occur, the Union would once again hold decisive advantages and would likely emerge victorious. But history doesn't always repeat itself exactly the same way. So what do you think would happen if the Confederacy returned today?